much would this cost to prevent a guesstimate? Because the president is really enamored with scientists, a lot more than his predecessor. It seems that you can get the message through to the president. And do you think it will? Do you think you can, and how much will it cost us?
Well, as part of the stimulus package, this would be chump change to give us $100 million.
$100 million, that's your number.
Just to reinforce power stations. Satellites will take more effort. We have to launch satellites that are reinforced to handle these things.
Do you have any connections with the White House personally?
Not personally, but again,
I'm really surprised that you haven't been invited there. You're like one of the top science guys in the country. Maybe after the show. Listen, we're going to have to let you go.
Okay.
This is just, it's frightening stuff, but it's also things that we should be aware of. And coming from you, you add a lot of credibility to it.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Now, Fox buffoonery aside, well-known physicist Michio Kaku, that last name is K-A-K-U, and that's a clip from Fox Business News Channel. And we've talked about CMEs, talked about solar flares, and even talked about EMPs, and that's something that we try and focus on, cyberspacewar.com. And that's where we're at. And as we head down the list of flashback flares and jackal hacktivism, we've got another Sun article, this one from Washington's blog, on how the sun affects us more than we might think. And again, we're only going to learn more about this as time goes by and as we get to these cycles and dates. But in the cyber world, you can call it Operation Ajax Truth. Iranian activists deface UK genetics website. This is, of course, in honor of the anniversary. It happened on August 19th, 1953. That would be Operation Ajax. It's now been declassified. Kermit Roosevelt wrote about it, bragged about it, that the CIA helped overthrow the democratically elected leader of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, educated in the West. And it comes down to he didn't want to play ball. He wanted to nationalize. He wanted to actually keep some of the resources for the people there. So more on that from 911blogger.com, and you should know some history about Operation Ajax. But if we hop to theregister.co.uk, the author of Day of the Jackal and the Odessa File, who's author and journalist Frederick Forsyth, blames the NSA for his wife's laptop hack. Novelist Frederick Forsyth has accused heavy-handed U.S. cyber spies of destroying his wife's computer in an attempt to tap into a copy he was filing for the Daily Express while in West Africa. The author of The Day of the Jackal and the Odessa File made the bizarre claim during a recent interview with the BBC TV program Hard Talk. Forsyth told the program that he arrived in the West African state of Guinea-Bissau to research an upcoming novel to find the country in the middle of a coup following the assassination of an army chief. Forsyth wrote a story on the unfolding events for the Daily Express, UK tabloid paper for which he writes an occasional column, and began to dictate his copy over the telephone to London before computer disaster struck. The novelist reckons that U.S. spooks not only listened into his conversation, but hacked into his wife's laptop, incompetently drawing attention to their nefarious activities by totaling the machine. Forsyth went on to say, and we do have links, and you can go listen to the interview and check it out. Forsyth went on to say that he has friends in low places who confirmed his suspicions that his spouse's PC was the target of a remote attack. A pre-existing malware infection seems far more likely, though, as security consultant Graham Cluley of Sophos points out, the idea that the NSA might be listening to international telephone calls from a country in the middle of a coup seems more than likely, but the remote blow-up yarn is wildly implausible. Perhaps Forsyth was retelling a story he'd earlier used to placate his wife for a damaged machine or to explain the tardiness or non-arrival of his copy. Now, of course, the Register always has snarky articles, and we're going to have more on that in the main episode 183 coming up very soon. But our last bit here on this DEF CON 819 flashback flares and jackal hacktivism WikiLeaks says Pentagon offers Afghan files help. This is from the CBC. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, you know, the guy who's annoyed by 9/11 truth, said this past Wednesday, the 18th, that the Pentagon has expressed willingness to discuss the online whistleblower's request for help in reviewing classified documents from the Afghan war and removing information that could harm civilians. The Pentagon denied any direct contact with WikiLeaks. This week, we received contact through our lawyers that the General Counsel of the Pentagon says now that they want to discuss the issue, Assange told the AP. Pentagon spokesman Brian Whitman denied any direct contacts between the Pentagon and WikiLeaks. He said the Pentagon is not interested in cooperating with WikiLeaks. Of course, this all swirling around the recent Afghan war diaries and how that all exploded into so many more things that essentially seem to point the finger to more war with Pakistan, which, of course, our Prince of Peace Prize will be more than happy to supply for his bankster overlords. But if we keep moving through cyberspacewar.com from Computer World, Apple manager arrested over $1 million in kickbacks. An Apple manager with responsibilities for the company's contract manufacturing in Asia was arrested last Friday and charged with accepting kickbacks. Global supply manager Paul Shin Devine was charged with accepting $1 million in kickbacks from half a dozen Asian suppliers of iPhone and iPod accessories. So says a federal indictment and a civil suit with links to mercurynews.com. Devine allegedly was paid for sharing confidential Apple info with contractors that helped them win Apple business on favorable terms. The Wall Street Journal reports that Devine gave confidential information to companies like Crescent in South Korea, Cater Electronics in China, and Jin Lee Mould Manufacturing in Singapore. He allegedly shared the kickbacks with Andrew Ang, an employee of Jin Lee, who the indictment charges helped broker deals with his employer and others. Meanwhile, Apple, last Friday the 13th, sued Devine in a case in U.S. District Court in San Jose. More from KeenObservers.com, and he was scheduled to appear last Monday in front of a court. Kickbacks and leaks and schemes. And of course, you should always remember, it's the bitten apple. Yes, of course, it's what I'm using now. It's what lets me do this. But you shouldn't miss the symbols. Like Saul Williams says, no one seems to recognize the symbols come to life. The bitten apple on the screen. And Jesus had a wife. We'll get into Jesus and John the Baptist later. But for now, coming from Threat Level, an unfortunate update on a story we've been tracking since it broke this past February. And we do have the flashback links going back to February and April of this year. But no charges in Pennsylvania schools' webcam Spygate. And we will note at the top a related article by way of the Telegraph, where Google CEO Eric Schmidt notes that young people today are going to have to change their names in the future to escape their cyber past that is being built up and, in most cases, in a lot of cases, willingly given away. So, I think that fits quite well with no charges in Pennsylvania schools' webcam Spygate. Federal authorities announced Tuesday, August 17, 2010, they will not prosecute administrators connected to a webcam spying scandal at a suburban Philadelphia school district. Prosecutors and the FBI opened an inquiry following a February privacy lawsuit accusing Lower Merion School District officials of spying on students with webcams on the 2,300 district-issued MacBooks. The lawyers who filed the lawsuit claimed the district secretly snapped thousands of webcam images of students, including images of youths at home, in bed, or even partially dressed. Zane David Meminger, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, said he found no criminal intent in the alleged surveillance. I have concluded that bringing criminal charges is not warranted in this matter. Meminger said in a statement. For the government to prosecute a criminal case, it must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person charged acted with criminal intent. We have not found evidence that would establish beyond a reasonable doubt that anyone involved had criminal intent. It came out that they took tens of thousands of photos and treated these kids as if it were a reality show. Oh, hey, I can't wait to see what Johnny's getting into tonight. There were emails. They laughed about it. It may not have been criminal in the way that this guy's talking about. They weren't using it to try and blackmail someone or use it for some other scheme. And the article does go on to kind of explicate some of that information. And like I said, we do have all the flashback links for you can fully go through this disgusting story. So you essentially have the guy who works for the state on the Fed level saying that the feds are saying it's not illegal to spy on kids through laptops, falsely using the reported missing. That was supposed to be the thing that would actually kick in the surveillance. They didn't even wait to do that. Negligence on multiple levels. But I digress, and we don't have time to keep going into this story. You should be disgusted. And I suppose this next story ties in, as we need someone to ask, want someone think of the children. Disney and Warner Brothers and more spied on children's web surfing habits, users' profiles, bought and sold on a stock market-like exchange. This from Raw Story, a class action lawsuit, and that's what I was going to say about the previous story about Pennsylvania. There may not be criminal charges, but I hope a lot of families are going to sue the hell out of them. A class action lawsuit filed in a federal court last week alleges that Disney and other large corporations spied on visitors to their websites using flash cookies installed on users' browsers. The lawsuit, filed in a U.S. District Court in Cali on behalf of a group of parents and their children, alleges that ClearSpring, a company contracted by Disney, Warner Brothers, Playlist.com, and other websites, used its Add This webpage tool to install flash cookies in computer browsers, which would then track individual computer users. According to CNET, the lawsuit states these cookies can't be erased using the usual methods of erasing browser history because they're built on flash technology. Additionally, SecPoint.com reports that these flash cookies can even undelete or respawn regular cookies that were erased by the user. Once installed, these small pieces of software track users across numerous websites, even spotting and tracking users when they access the web from different computers at home and at work. Disney and Warner spying on kids. And even if it's not a sinister Orwellian, which of course it all is, they all... what I'm saying is when Big Brother comes in, they just say, but it's just for better advertising. Our final story on cyberspacewar.com is perhaps the most important, and this is a story that we followed on Media Monarchy. We've now cross-posted it to Cyberspace War. Hate blogger Hal Turner burned by the government he served. Racist provocateur radio host Hal Turner, of course, worked for the FBI. This story's been going on for over a year now. And let's take it from Kurt Nimmo. On last Friday, the 13th, a jury found National Security Intelligence asset Hal Turner guilty of threatening to kill a judge. Prosecutors argued the former radio host threatened to kill federal judges Richard Posner, William Bauer, and Frank Easterbrook after they upheld a law banning handguns in Chicago. Quote, "Let me be the first to say this plainly, these judges deserve to be killed," end quote, Turner posted on his website in June 2009. He also posted the judges' phone numbers and office addresses. Two previous attempts by the government to convict Turner resulted in mistrials with deadlocked juries. After the third time is the charm, and Turner's conviction and possible 10-year prison term is yet another example of the government habitually burning trusted assets. This was a guy stirring up homegrown errorism, but of course, and as this threat level and some of the articles that we link to barely point out the fact that it was proven that he was an FBI informant. He was a national security intelligence asset. False flag activity.